Thanks everybody for joining tonight. So we're going to talk about tips for effective door-to-door canvassing, and that's actually the thing that made me fall in love with politics in general years and years ago, longer than I even like to think about sometimes. But just a little bit about myself. I'm from a place called Danville, Virginia. I joined Barack Obama's campaign after getting crushed in two labor situations that I had tried to work with in the United Brothers of Carpenters and the Right to Work state. Not a fun thing to do, but I tried, and I started realizing that there was a chance that I could actually do more good, through politics, through getting good people elected, and that kind of became my passion, and I started paying attention to that. I found Barack Obama's campaign and started putting my labor skills to work, and eventually they gave me a job, and one thing led to another, and here I am with y'all today and or tonight rather, and I'm happy to be here and running a congressional campaign right now in Virginia. Um, so tonight, I'm really happy that National Democrat Training Committee has partnered with White Dudes for Harris. It just kind of came out of nowhere and has done amazing work. And we're going to talk about GOTV training and have a whole series that's going on. Tonight, we're going to talk about effective door-to-door canvassing. Next Tuesday, we're going to talk about effective phone banking conversations and how that flow goes, and just kind of try to get over the any barriers that there may be to that. And then on the 22nd and the 29th, we're going to talk about helping people make their plans to vote, which is very important because people, it's easy when you ask folks, hey, what are you going to do on election day? It makes them start thinking about it. I ran into a guy one time. My candidate was a cardiologist, and he was like, oh, Dr. Miller, he saved my life, a couple of years ago. Of course, I'm going to vote for him. When's the election? And I'm like, you've got 2 hours. The polls closed. They're right down the street. And he's like, well, let me get my shirt, and I'll be on the way. So you just never know when you're going to get that one person that has no idea, and you would be surprised how often that happens. So we want to make sure everybody's making their plans to vote. So we will have different trainings just on that alone. But tonight, again, we're going to be talking about what to expect when you're canvassing for a campaign, and then also review key door-to-door do's and don'ts, and things that we absolutely make sure we try to always do, and things that we try to make sure we never do. Um, and for first, we can have an icebreaker. Have you ever knocked on doors for a campaign or cause? And if so, what was your experience like? And I'll start out. And I had shared with everyone earlier that canvassing, even with y'all, I shared a little bit that canvassing made me fall in love with politics in general, because I had so many different conversations with people at their homes, doing what they did, which was always different. Musicians or construction workers or long truck drivers or teachers or librarians or you name it, just everybody. You talk to, you never know when you might go from one door and then you go to another door and it's a completely different person, and you learn something completely different. And looking back, I realized that the first couple of years of canvassing, even though I fell in love with politics, I had some much more rewarding canvassing after that. But just that experience really made me fall in love with it. And anyways, thank you so much for indulging in that. And and we'll just dive right in to our introduction. How do we canvass? Why do we canvass? What's the point of the particular way we do it? So there are a couple of different types of canvassing. Knocking on doors is what some people call canvassing. It's when you actually go to somebody's house, you knock on their door in general. That's what our canvassing we're going to talk about tonight is. Volunteer powered high traffic canvassing. Sometimes you might go to what we call a high traffic area, a lot of pedestrian folks, farmers markets, etc. We gave away hot chocolate at the metro one time up in DC. It was really cold, and we were up there giving hot chocolate and registering voters, and people took a second and they appreciated the hot chocolate, and we really cleaned up on voter registration. We actually registered more people with Obama in 2008 at Piggly Wiggly, which is a grocery store. We registered more people. It's the real statistic. We registered more people in Piggly Wiggly grocery store parking lot than we won the state by. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the power of one tonight and what you can do. What we have learned about canvassing analytically or qualitatively and quantitatively, and you can look at the Analyst Institute. It talks about some of the data that comes from what canvassing is and what it does and how it does impact turnout. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's the most effective voter mobilization tactic by far. Neighbor to neighbor. Hey, let me look you right in your eye and talk to you about this election because it's really important. I was in Sam's Club earlier and they talked about how much Walmart cared about me voting. And they just didn't do it for me. And that's not going to do it for many people. It's not going to get out the vote. It's a great opportunity to involve other people that are in your network. If you've got friends that are like-minded individuals but haven't taken that step, if you get involved, they may join you. And that's honestly your best volunteers. And that's the nature of organizing, is making that personal relationship or taking existing personal relationships and leveraging those things in order to move people to action and things that we want to do together. And it's genuinely fun. Have a good time. Please, by all means, make sure you're hydrated, make a snack with you. Again, I fell in love with canvassing, and maybe it's because I do obviously talk and a lot more than maybe I should sometimes. But there are two main reasons that we canvass, and we have a saying in politics, and anybody that's ever dealt with a lot of political things, you hear, well, if it's not in the van or the database, it never happened. And you hate hearing that, but it is true. If you don't enter your data, then we don't know what happened. So the whole point of us going to doors, and we'll talk about that, is we have specific questions we want to ask people, like, for instance, the people already early voted in many states right now. We want to ask them if they voted, okay? And if they say yes, they voted, then we want to make sure we mark that data on our phone or our paper list if we happen to be still using that. And that way, someone won't come to their house tomorrow and say, are you going to vote? And they say, well, you just got here yesterday, because they wouldn't know, right? So you waste time and efforts, and I've seen that happen before. So it's not an unprecedented thing. So make sure you enter your data, but make sure you're having good quality conversations. And sometimes there are two people that do that. Find opportunities to get involved. Search Mobilize. That's our app where you can find a lot of things that are going on locally with you. Hopefully you have a strong Democratic committee where you're at, the Democratic Party of the state. If not, in your locality, check with the state. Check the websites out, check their Facebook out, check their Twitter out, send them a message. Sometimes it takes all the above type of thing, just depending on what condition things are in. So right now we want to do as much as we can. So do anything you can to get plugged in. If there are other progressive organizations that are helping the campaign, like National Democratic Training Committee, like White Dudes for Harris, then make sure you get involved and make sure you do whatever that you can do to make your voice heard and make your time count to help push us across, and so we can run through the tape. So supporting a canvas, ways to get involved beyond the doors, right? So knocking on the doors is very important, but it doesn't just start and end with knocking on the doors. You have to have a location. You have to have materials or list numbers. There's computer work that has to happen. So, you want a canvas captain, which is an experienced canvasser and someone who can actually put some folks together and get people doing what needs to be done. A lot of time, the canvas captain and the training captain are the most experienced canvassers, because obviously you can't teach someone how to do something that you do not know how to do. So you have those folks, critical roles. Have your canvas captain is kind of making sure everybody gets out, everybody's got what they need. You've got your data captain who's making sure that they're recording all of the things that come back if you have paper lists. And also in sign-in sheets too. Your training captain who's making sure that there's uniformity, just like McDonald's. If you get a Big Mac in California or you get a Big Mac in Virginia, they say they are the same. I have to test it out one day, but that's what we're going for here. We're going for a standardization of the experience that people are getting, and making sure that everyone's doing a good job. And a greeter, the greeter's there to make sure everyone comes in, they sign in. Again, going back to the data, The greeter's there for more than just making sure, you feel warm and all that sort of thing, but they are there for that too. But all that's important. The greeter's there, the training captain, data captain, canvas captain, and everybody has a critical role. And we'll talk about staging locations and how and where all those folks fit into that in a little bit. Again, well, that wasn't that long, was it? So our staging locations, first thing you do when you come in, you talk to your greeter, right? Again, like I said, your greeter's got their sign-in sheet right there in front of you. They're usually going, "Hey, how you doing? What's your name?" So they're going to, get you to sign in right there. They're going to also make sure that, if they're not, if sometimes you have a couple of greeters and they may do the training themselves, or they may be pushing you to a next station where you sign in here, then you move over to get trained. Pick up your materials and most likely snacks on your way out the door. That'll be if you're doing paper, that'll be your list. It's printed out already. It'll have a cool map on there, show you where everybody's at. It'll probably be your phone. So it'll probably just be your phone. You got your phone with you. It's got GPS, and so you can actually follow that around, and that way you can jump around to different ways if you want to go to one side of the street versus another. It'll accommodate you. It doesn't make you. It's not rigid, so you can play around with it. If you want to skip a street and come back to it, you can do that. Then just hit the road and have your way. With everything. Materials that you have to make sure you absolutely have: your clipboard, your pens. Not only does it give you some credibility because you've got your clipboard in your hand and you're walking down the street, you got your pen, right? Your clipboard gives you a place to put all your literature. If you're using paper, it gives you a place to put your paper, and the pen, obviously, for making notes and for marking things as needed. Make sure you get your campaign swag if you can, if you have any with you. Hopefully, each location will at least have some stickers to give you. If nothing else, I like to use stickers with canvases. I put them in little packs. And obviously, you'll have some literature. That's where your clipboard comes in, because you don't want to drop it around and whatnot. That's not the way to do it. Make sure you have your walk list if you are using print. If you're using digital, you'll make sure you have a walk number. So that'll just be a number that someone will give you. You'll probably enter it into your phone right there as you're at the location. And so that way, there'll probably be someone to make sure you have everything ready to rock before you walk out the door. And make sure you have your scripts. And we'll talk a little bit more about scripts here in a second. Now, we talked about printed versus using your phone. This is what it looks like if you use your phone. This is called Minivan, Vans Voter Activation Network. Some people may have heard it called Vote Builder. That's just a database that the party uses, the Democratic Party uses, to keep track of voters and to hopefully target voters in a really effective way. And it's gotten better and better and better every single year that goes by. But now, let's see. Yeah, so now the minivan actually has gotten great, because broadband's gotten better, honestly, because for years we've been talking about broadband expansion. It's finally happened in places like where I live at. So I'm sorry, minivan gives me some emotions, but now it works great. It'll have your script right there on your phone, so it's very easy. You can, when you click yes or probably, maybe, probably not, it actually automatically save the data for you, so you actually don't have to do that. And that has really saved us a lot of time and expense in ink. Expect to knock about 20 doors an hour if canvassing in an urban or suburban area. Sometimes, when you get into more rural areas, it takes longer to get to each place. So don't think 20 is always going to be what it is, because it can be less than that. And sometimes if you're changing people's hearts and minds, you may have some very effective conversations if you're doing good. Again, I'll leave that up to you to decide. Contact rates can range from 15 to 30%, depending where you're at, which leads to 3 to 6 actual conversations per hour, and depending on how long they go. And we try to keep them short just to be as efficient as humanly possible. We want to make sure that you're having successful conversations. I know it can be intimidating when you're walking up to somebody's house right? I get it. That every year almost the first couple of doors feels a little weird. It just does because you feel like you got to knock the dust off. So that's a normal that feeling like there's a barrier. That's a super normal thing that you have to get over when it comes to canvassing. But then what you'll realize is once you start talking to people, you're having such a good time. You don't even know what's going on. You don't know when it's time, to stop hardly. You get done and say, "Oh man, I wish it wasn't getting dark." So your script, you will have a script, whether it's in print like here or if it's on your phone like we just looked at. Try to stick to the script, but make it your own. Make sure you're asking the questions, make sure you're hitting the talking points, but have a conversation. It's very important that you're having that conversation to make sure that people are feeling comfortable. Core elements you'll hear across all scripts, and I'll go through just a sample conversation here in a second. But you want to obviously introduce yourself. I'm Josh. I'm a volunteer on behalf of White Dudes for Harris. I'm here to talk to you about Kamala Harris, et cetera, et cetera. But ask questions, make sure it's a conversation. You don't want to talk at people, right? The worst thing you can do is run up to someone's door with a script in front of you. These are your neighbors. These are people that they are interested. If they've opened the door and they're talking to you, they're interested in having a conversation. So make sure you're listening to them. It's very important that it's not a one-way conversation. But we want to make sure that we're asking questions as well as informing people of the candidate, and asking those questions also, as you'll see in the flow here in a minute, asking those questions also gives you an opportunity to or listening to them gives you an opportunity to ask the questions. That's one thing you'll notice. So listen, and then ask based on what you hear, and then lean into the things that matter to that person. Thank them profusely and keep moving. A sample conversation here, and again, I will not, go too over the top with reading every little thing. But again, introduce yourself. This is someone that lives near you, more than likely. This is your fellow American. This is your somebody you are interested in having a conversation with. So just introduce yourself. Let them know you're volunteering, and chances are they'll be happy at that. They're not going to be rude because you're not trying to sell them anything. They'll be super chill about it. That's one thing I've noticed. It is intimidating sometimes to try to just run out there, but what I've noticed, people get happy, especially if you're telling them about stuff they didn't know when election day is, what they need to do to make a plan, all of those critical things. Um, obviously making sure, she's identifying herself as a volunteer. Talked to Roger a couple of doors down. So she's mentioning someone else in the neighborhood. That's an extra validator. And he's been texted by Roger, right? So he agrees. So again, that just, you start to get into that conversation. And since she's been listening, she knows, hey, the last big storm left our house without power. They're starting to build repertoire here. They're starting to build a relationship. And you can really use that to say, hey, can we count on your vote, right? We need to make sure that we're fighting for climate change. And he's obviously more likely to be receptive to that because they have built that repertoire between the two of them. And again, thank them so much. Let them know about early voting, because we know early voting is super important, and it's happening right now where I'm at in Virginia. And it's happening in so many states that matter so much, and we're going to hear more about that in a bit. But we want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what and where they need to do to vote. So give them the information and make sure they are armed with everything that they need. And then again, just thank them so much. Let them know how important it is. And then, they'll be super cool, ready to rock and roll and change the world. Again, just to reiterate, we want to make sure everybody feels that they're valued. We're showing respect and open to other people's perspectives without being combative. We're engaging with their responses. We're using verbal and nonverbal cues to show that you're listening. And we're being attuned to their emotional state. If somebody's freaking out and having a terrible time, maybe it's best not, maybe it's best to keep going, right? If somebody's really wants to talk forever, maybe you have to cut that off. So just treat it as use your best judgment on some things, But the bottom line is to really to establish that relationship, leverage that relationship to make sure they get out and vote, get a commitment from them that they're going to do so, and keep going. That's really the main thing. Um, any questions that we're having? I'm absolutely willing to go to dive into those at this point. I haven't been looking at the chat. I apologize. I have attention deficit, so if I do the chat, it just squirrel. It's one of those deals. If we have any folks, I'm waiting. I got a little situation that people can send me some questions if we have some. So if not, we'll just keep it moving. All right. Somebody actually asked about bringing a pet. Sure. Great idea. Also, a good idea. That brings up a wonderful thing that I've had several candidates do, which is keep some milk bones in your pocket, break them in half. Never hurts to have some dog treats with you. Make sure because that way, that can help you out a whole lot, both with voters and with dogs or cat. If you've got a little treat there and there's a dog coming at you and you say, here you go, that can stop something from happening. If you're talking to a voter and you give their dog a snack, you just got to vote. I mean, even if they're not with your candidate, sometimes you can change their mind by changing their pet's mind. But that's a wonderful question. Thank you so much for asking that. But absolutely bring your fur babies. Absolutely. My guy, he's a little too lazy. Okay. If you read in a red area, is it good to canvas there? Someone asked about being in a red area. I started in a red area. Absolutely. Yes. I talked to people years and years ago, and I don't want to get into a bunch of details, but when the vice president was picked, I noticed a whole lot of people in that red area that had been telling me they weren't decided, all of a sudden decided, and they were with us. And they were really on the fence. I thought that they were not being truthful with me, but turns out they were absolutely with us, and they as soon as that decision was made, that's all they needed to make up their mind. Excellent question. That's how I got started, and that's where I fell in love with rural canvassing, which is it's tough because houses are spread out sometimes. Essential do's and don'ts. So there are some things we always try to make sure we do, and some things we try to make sure that we never do. And I will go over those. Do's. Do always make sure that you're taking clear notes and tracking every result. If we're using minivan, a lot of that's going to be already done. Always introduce yourself. These are your neighbors. Follow the script, but make it your own. Again, don't read at them. Make it your own. Make sure that you return your packet materials to the staging site. If you don't bring your results back, if you do have printed materials, then there's not going to be any data entry done. If it's going to rain, make sure you dress with the rain. If it's going to be hot, make sure you dress with the heat. If it's going to be cold, make sure you dress with the cold, etc. If one of the problems, like I said, that I had a volunteer one time that was she was a rocket scientist, uh, and very, very, very timid. And she came in, and I had a volunteer sit down with her and to make phone calls. And she really got into it, making those phone calls. And she did it for a couple of days in a row. And just pulling her outside of her comfort zone and getting that practice in, before you know it, she was canvassing. Before you know it, she ran for her local committee chairmanship, and then she ran for office ultimately. So, sometimes, one of the things that I've noticed as far as canvassing, as long as you like to talk to people, you're going to be great at it. Sometimes it's just about getting over that initial jump and just jumping in there and start talking to people. It's best to go with someone that's done it a few times the first couple of times you go. Don't go by yourself the first couple of times you go. Go with a buddy. And some people will try to tell you not to do that, but do that. If you need to do that, do that. If you feel confident, maybe don't. But please go out with someone if you're feeling a little hesitant, and even if you're not, it's always good to get that training. Some things we don't want to do, absolutely. We don't want to go inside houses. You never know what's going on. We don't want to make excuses for folks. If people don't want to do this or don't want to do that, don't say that's okay. Just keep it moving. Never put anything in the mailbox. It's illegal. Do not touch the mailbox. It's okay to stick stuff under the mat, under a potted plant, shut it in the door, in the screen door, any of that. Don't go negative. We don't want. We're not there to talk trash about the other folks. We're there to talk, about our vision, our positive vision for the future. There's plenty of negativity going around. We don't need to add to that. Don't ignore any posted signage. If you get to a place and there's a gazillion no trespassing signs and this and that and the other, um, use your best judgment. If for whatever reason, not even posted signage, but I'll elaborate. If for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable going somewhere, don't do it. That use your best judgment in everything. If you think that someone is all in when you're talking to them and you think you need to make sure they volunteer, make sure you do a hard volunteer ask, right? Um, use your best judgment in all things that you do. And you'll find that that really serves you well. All right, so key takeaways that I want to make sure everyone has gotten from this is our canvassing is the most effective tactic for voter mobilization at scale. Again, there's a place called the Analyst Institute. You can look at the statistics there. They've done lots of work around canvassing and about what's good and what works, what doesn't work, and how effective it actually is. So please look that data up. Let the script guide your conversations. Again, don't make it, don't go up with the script in your face in front, and talk at the people and read at people. Make it your own, but use it as a guide to your conversations. Make sure you're hitting the talking points, you're asking the questions, and that way that you're gathering the data, which is ultimately what's going to help to guide us. Make sure that you're gathering accurate data on the conversations. It's really important that you do that. I've had different ones come back that we had a 1 through 5 scale, and people that have canvassed a lot will understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's kind of confusing, but there's a little guide that tells you exactly how to do it. That's why the training is important. Sometimes people put down all 5s instead of all 1s, thinking that 5 was a yes, and actually 5 was absolutely not. So the worst thing in the world is to go out there for a couple of hours and then your data's wrong. So make sure you're getting accurate data on every single voter contact that you're doing, because we don't want for somebody to not understand what happened. If you feel the need to wear a mask, what I've noticed is people don't say anything at all to me. If I did actually wear a mask the other day when I went out, and I had some people look at me funny, and I could tell they wanted to say something, and I would just say, hey, I felt a little sniffly today. I want to make sure that I'm not contagious with it. So if you feel like you need to wear a mask and to get out there and be safe and take care of yourself, that is absolutely fine. And like I said, anytime I saw somebody kind of looking at me like they wanted to ask about it, I would just say, hey, I'm just wearing this. I want to make sure we're okay. I didn't feel good yesterday, or my wife didn't feel good yesterday, whatever the case may be. All right, so I want to make sure that you tell us what you think about my presentation tonight, and also I'm going to keep an eye out here for any questions. Now is a wonderful time for you to ask some questions, because I do have just a couple of extra minutes here. But the trainer evaluation is super important. There's our link there, so you can scan that QR code, complete a brief survey on the training. If I went too fast, I went too slow, whatever the case may be. Please let me know. If you have more questions after this training, again, right now, I'm looking out for questions so please ask me anything. And I see somebody's about to do that. But yeah, if you have any questions that I haven't answered, make sure that you're going to live trainings at traindemocrats.org, and you'll be able to reach us there. When the parent, you still talk one-on-one. Okay, so if you go out with someone, no, I would go right there with them. I would be right beside them the whole time, like I'm their best friend, and I want to know everything they do, and I want to do it just like them. If there's someone that's been out here learning how to do this a lot of times what I've realized is the same people do this in the same localities over and over and over every year. Some of those people might be on this call right now. And God bless you. And thank you so much. Okay. I want you to hear that from me. But always learn from folks. You know, people have been out and they've been talking to folks, get right there with them, learn from them. You know, they've spent time doing this, so you know, absolutely pick up best practices. It'll save you a lot of time and trouble, and also make you more comfortable to go out by yourself. And next thing you know, you're training somebody how to do it, and you're a canvas captain, and you know, you're running a staging location, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I'll go ahead and switch to the next one here. While other questions are coming in. But we want to make sure that you join us next week for our tips for effective phone banking conversations, and where you'll learn how to get the most out of time spent making calls and sending text messages on behalf of the campaign. And again, thank you so much. I'm going to answer the questions here, but we got, oh, got some, apparently y'all had a good time. Don't make me blush, please. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good slide to end on. But please go to traindemocrats.org, where you can go to virtual live trainings for free. It doesn't cost anything at all. You just got to check a box saying you're a Democrat. But thank you all so much. You could have been anywhere at all, but you're right here with me, and there's nowhere else that I'd rather be at all. We do not. Why we don't want to put anything in the mail is because that is illegal. Period. Okay, that's look. Google it. Google, is it legal to open someone else's mailbox? And Google will tell you absolutely not. Do not touch anyone else's. Please, 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 do not touch anyone else's mailbox. Okay, because that's not. You know, we don't want the Republicans to be able to say, "Ah, look at there," you know, there they were stealing my mail or something. But just leave the mailbox alone. It is illegal, so don't do that, please. But I hope everyone enjoyed it. I have enjoyed this quite a bit. And again, like I said, this is what made me fall in love with training. We've got our virtual live trainings at traindemocrat.org. You can follow us on all our socials. And again, my name is Josh Norris, and it's been just my incredible pleasure to be here. And I can't wait to not only watch the first African American female president get sworn in, but also my candidate who's running for office, who also be the first African American female sworn into her particular race. And so I'm feeling really good about this year. I'm feeling really good about our congressional candidates from the bottom all the way up to our senatorial candidates and beyond, and our gubernatorial candidates, and obviously with Governor Walz and with Vice President Harris. I'm just so filled with joy and so optimistic, and I haven't felt like this since Obama 2008. 2012 didn't have anything on this, and I was here for both of them. And I can tell you right now, I have not felt this since 2008, and I'm just feeling really good. And thank you all so much.